What's going on, guys? The Comics Kid 2099 here, and over the last couple weeks I've been reviewing storylines from Joss Whedon and John Cassaday's Astonishing X-Men run. Today I'm going to be talking about the third arc in this series. It is issues 13 through 18. I don't remember what the name of this arc was. I'll probably try to put some words on the screen, the name of this arc, but it's the storyline where the Hellfire Club allegedly attacks this Astonishing X-Men team. And I mentioned a couple of weeks ago when I was talking about the first run, or the first volume of this run, that this is a series that starts off really fantastic and gets worse with each storyline, and I hate to say it, but that is holding to be true. I wasn't sure if maybe this was going to be a situation kind of like what I had with Chris Claremont's Extreme X-Men, where I had really fond memories of that run, but then when you go back and you read those stories now, a lot of them aren't very good. I wasn't sure if I was going to have that, where I would have like a very different experience reading this run, but this story, this particular story, not very good. Of course, the storyline with the Danger Room wasn't as good as the Cure storyline, in my opinion, but boy, was it War and Peace compared to this storyline, because this is just really bad, really messy. There's very little plot here, and what little plot is here is very disjointed, doesn't make a lot of sense in context with the rest of the X-Men universe outside of this run, and also it just doesn't make a lot of sense in this run. So basically, I've talked a little bit before about how in this run, Joss Whedon likes using these end of the issue, big wow, jaw-dropping moments. He did it a few times, and in my opinion, only one of those times actually worked. The first one that I can think of was when it was revealed that Colossus was still alive, and that was the best one in my opinion. We also had one that actually did come before that one, now that I think of it, and that was the one where Beast said, how come nothing ever stays buried? And then Scott immediately responds with Jean, and that was the end of the issue. And it's like, whoa, Jean Grey's coming back to life. And then, of course, in the next issue, they don't even acknowledge that Scott said that. They don't in any way really acknowledge that situation. They just move on and pretend like it didn't happen. And that's really what Whedon does. He'll like to end the issue on a big whoa moment, but then whenever he follows up on that moment, with the exception of Colossus being back from the dead, which ended up being exactly what it looked like, with the exception of that one, it ends up being something different than what the end of the issue whoa moment led you to believe, and most of the time, in my opinion, it ends up being a disappointment. Like whenever he was teasing that Jean Grey was coming back to life, and then she didn't come back to life. And then here, a couple times, we've had whoa moments about Emma Frost possibly betraying the team. And I remember when this series was coming out, I didn't exactly hate Emma Frost. She's not one of my favorite characters. She's not a likable character at all, and the people who are fans of this character will certainly say that that's the whole point of the character, that she's not likable. But if a character is mean and rude and hateful, I'm not going to respond well to that character, even if that's the whole point of the character. But I never set out to actively hate the character of Emma Frost. But at the end of the first storyline, when Emma is talking to someone, and we don't even know who it is, and she's saying, soon we will strike against the X-Men, she's saying something like that, that kind of, in my mind, is like, okay, we need to prepare ourselves. Emma Frost is a traitor, she's going to be attacking the X-Men soon. And this storyline kind of shoots those expectations down yet again. And it's not in a good way. It's not like, oh, we had expectations, those expectations weren't met, but what did happen ended up being better. Unless you're a huge, huge fan of Emma Frost being part of the X-Men, and you were happy that she didn't end up being an actual traitor to the team, then you might have been disappointed that, oh, Emma didn't actually betray the team. I was a little disappointed that what we had been led to believe was going to happen for over a year didn't actually happen. We were more or less just lied to, and I don't feel like that's a very good practice to get into when you're writing a series like this. So anyway, we found out at the end of the first storyline that Emma is talking to someone about how she's going to betray the X-Men. At the end of the second storyline, we find out that she is part of a new Hellfire Club with Sebastian Shaw, a student that she taught on Genosha at the very beginning of Grant Morrison's run. This was a throwaway character that Morrison created just to die in the death of Genosha, Negasonic Teenage Warhead, Cassandra Nova, and then another character who is hooded and we don't know who it is, called Perfection. And this storyline sees that team attacking the X-Men. And we don't know, for most of the storyline, we really don't know what they are after. They're just here to basically keep the X-Men busy while Emma tricks Kitty Pryde into opening up a box. We find out that inside this box is this disgusting, slimy thing, for lack of a better word, and this is the body that Cassandra Nova was trapped in Grant Morrison's New X-Men run. And basically, Cassandra Nova has tricked Emma Frost, I guess, into releasing this body so that Cassandra Nova can be released from the body and she can go back to doing her evil thing. A few things to note. Number one, we see at one point a flashback before Genosha was destroyed where Emma Frost met with Cassandra Nova, and Cassandra Nova said, okay, we are going to create a secondary mutation for you. You are going to have the ability to turn into Diamond so that you can survive the destruction of Genosha. I should point out that Cassandra Nova, at no point did she ever demonstrate the ability to create secondary mutations for mutants. Also, there are a whole bunch of other mutants out there with secondary mutations, and those mutations were natural. There was not somebody who made a secondary mutation for, say, Angel when he suddenly had the ability to heal people with his blood. Now, Beast, his secondary mutation wasn't really a secondary mutation. It was just an extension of his first mutation brought about by Sage. So I'll say that one wasn't really natural, but most of the time, anytime a character had a secondary mutation, up until now we were led to believe Emma's was natural, but then suddenly we're told, no, Cassandra Nova kind of created it. That doesn't really make any sense. Also, we find out in the storyline that the Hellfire Club that Emma Frost is working with, they are figments of her imagination. They are not real. She is creating them out of psychic projection powers. This is really bullcrap because Chris Claremont was working on, he was leading up to a Hellfire Club storyline in Uncanny X-Men around this same time. And I talked about this back when I was reviewing the mid-2000s Uncanny X-Men run by Claremont, and basically he was told, hey, you're going to have to stop doing that storyline that you've been leading up to for a while because Joss Whedon is doing a Hellfire Club story in Astonishing X-Men, except that he didn't. All of these Hellfire Club characters are just figments of Emma's imagination. There's no reason that Chris Claremont even had to stop doing his story because he was actually using Sebastian Shaw. Joss Whedon is just using a figment of Emma's imagination. That has always irritated me because it's very clear that Marvel treated Joss Whedon with more respect than they treated their in-house writers who had been working for them for decades. That's just kind of baloney. That bothers me, rubs me the wrong way. Also, it's really stupid that Cassandra Nova is trapped inside this box in her slug body. Why is it stupid, you may ask? Because in Grant Morrison's New X-Men run, the second time that Cassandra Nova attacked, they put her inside the body of this alien shapeshifter who's from the Shi'ar Imperial Guard. His name was Stuff, and he was basically this big, huge floating bag of mucus, for lack of a better word. They put her mind inside Stuff. And then we find out at the very end of Grant Morrison's run that Stuff was actually persuaded to transform into a student named Ernst. We saw this student named Ernst who was walking around with Zorn's special class, and she showed up after Cassandra Nova's second attack on the school. And Ernst was actually Cassandra Nova in a new body. We were told right after Cassandra Nova's second attack that Charles Xavier and Jean Grey were going to start training her and reteaching her, basically. And they were going to reform her in psychic training lessons. Well, we find out that sometime after those lessons started, they turned her into Ernst and they let her be a student at the school. So Cassandra Nova was a student at the school. Then, after Grant Morrison's run on New X-Men ended, simultaneously you had Chuck Austen. He did 2 issues on New X-Men, and also Joss Whedon's run on Astonishing X-Men began. In Chuck Austen's 2 issues of New X-Men, right before it became adjectiveless X-Men once again, Cyclops and Beast are like, hold on a second, the power was out at the school, that means that Cassandra Nova probably escaped. And then they went down into the basement and they couldn't find Cassandra Nova, and then that subplot was seemingly dealt with. It was a little weird because it makes it seem like Professor X forgot to tell these 2 guys that, hey, Cassandra Nova is now a student at the school. Well, now we find out that apparently Joss Whedon hasn't even read Grant Morrison's New X-Men series, even though this series is chock full of references to that run. Apparently, he didn't read the story where it's revealed that Ernst was actually Cassandra Nova, because here, Cassandra Nova's stuff body is underneath this little metal box that keeps anyone from getting inside. The whole premise of this storyline is based on the idea that you haven't read the X-Men comics that came out immediately before Joss Whedon's Astonishing X-Men. That is just something that bothers me just from a continuity perspective, because I thought that the idea that Cassandra Nova was being retrained, I guess I should say, and she was turned into a more simple, harmless character in Ernst, I thought that was a really interesting idea. It was a nice little twist at the end of Morrison's run, and I feel like this storyline kind of craps all over that, and it doesn't do anything interesting in crapping all over it. Sometimes you might have a writer who is going to retcon a previous story, but they do something interesting in that retcon. So even if you like the original story before the retcon, and you may not like that it's being retconned, at least something interesting came out of the retcon. In this case, I don't feel like anything interesting came out of this. I don't really get the feeling that there's any character who is spotlighted in this storyline. You could say Emma Frost is kind of the spotlight of this story, except that we don't get any of that garbage or mumbo-jumbo about her being guilty, about being one of the only survivors of Genosha. We don't get any of that until the final issue of this storyline. It's just kind of info dumped on us on the very last issue of this story. Oh, by the way, this is why she was doing it. She felt really guilty about being one of the only survivors of Genosha. That's really dumb. That's all I have to say about that. It's really stupid that for well over a year, because bear in mind, even though there's only 25 issues in this run, it took Whedon and Cassaday 4 years to do this series. So for well over a year, probably over 2 years by this point, they had been seeding this idea that Emma Frost was going to betray the team, and then, oh no, we're just kidding, she just feels really bad about it, so she attacked them, and now they're all going to forgive her for some reason. That's really stupid. Also, this whole arc really just feels like it's killing time for the big finale, which is going to be taking place on Breakworld. During all of this going on, Danger, she goes to the Sword satellite and breaks out Ord, and then the two of them go to the school to kill Colossus, and presumably Danger is going to kill the rest of the X-Men for some stupid reason. Remember, her whole motivation in the previous story was killing her father, aka Professor X. And then she did say at one point she was going to kill the X-Men, I guess, to get at her father, but at this point, that would be kind of pointless. All she really has to do is go and kill her father, if that's part of her motivation still. But at this point, really, she's just a vessel for the plot to be happening. She goes and breaks out Ord, and then they go to the school, and then everybody, Danger, Ord, all of the X-Men, and Armor, they are all beamed up aboard a Sword spaceship, and then that's the end of the issue. Also, I forgot to mention, this issue does, or the last issue of this arc does at one point show what appears to be Cassandra Nova trying to beam aboard Hisako Armor's body. It seems like she's trying to put herself in Hisako's mind. That is never followed up again. I remember when this series was coming out and when that issue came out, actually, it was when this series ended, when Whedon and Cassaday's run ended. I remember people complaining that that whole thing about Cassandra Nova jumping into Armor's mind was never followed up on. And I remember thinking, I don't remember that happening. And then reading it this time, it's like, oh yeah, there's that panel. It's happening right there. It very clearly looks like Cassandra Nova is trying to take over Armor, and then nothing is done with that. It's like Whedon gave Cassaday this idea, hey, you need to draw this here, and then they just forgot to follow up on it. Or maybe Cassaday just thought it would be fun to draw that without telling Whedon what he was doing, and then Whedon didn't plan for that in the final arc. I don't know. But this whole arc is really weak. Very little character stuff, and what little character stuff there is extremely stupid. This retcons what, in my opinion, was a very interesting twist in Grant Morrison's run to do nothing with that twist in this whole story. And basically, this whole arc feels like it's just kind of buying time so that Danger and Ord can come to the school, and then all these characters can get teleported to the Breakworld. And then we'll find out what happens in the next storyline. Overall, this is the weakest of the three stories so far. Of course, there's still the Breakworld storyline that we will be talking about next week, but overall, not a huge fan of this storyline. And so far, it seems like what I said, that this series starts off really fantastic with the Cure storyline and gradually gets worse. It seems like that's holding true so far. So those are my thoughts on the third storyline of Joss Whedon and John Cassaday's Astonishing X-Men run. I hope that you guys liked this video, and if you did, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And I have some other videos that I'll be putting up for you guys later this week. Be sure to check those out as well. In the meantime, I will see you guys in the future. Have a great rest of the day.